My name is Marissa Carter, and I'm 28 years old. If you asked anyone in my family to describe me, they'd probably hesitate, not because they don't know me, but because they've spent most of my life pretending I wasn't really there. For as long as I can remember, I've been the background character in my own home, the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who learned early that if I wanted anything in life, I'd have to earn it myself. The spotlight belonged to someone else. My younger sister, Paige. 3 years younger, but treated like she descended from heaven, wrapped in gold ribbons. The miracle child. The rainbow after the storm, as my mother liked to say, because she was born after a miscarriage. A tragedy rewritten into a family myth that put Paige at the center of every conversation, every celebration, every expectation. If Paige wanted something, it appeared. Private coaches, dance classes, Italian summer camps, designer clothes, tutors. Her 16th birthday gift was a brand new white Audi with a massive red bow, like something out of a commercial. My 16th birthday? A text message from my parents while I rang up groceries at my part-time job. That contrast, it wasn't just a moment. It was a summary of my entire childhood. What made it worse wasn't the inequality itself, but the way Paige believed she deserved it. She'd look at me with glossy lips and marble floor confidence and say things like, "Maybe if you tried harder, Mom and Dad would treat you better." Meanwhile, the hardest thing she had to do was decide which color nail polish to wear to her next audition. I never fought back. I wasn't loud, wasn't confrontational. I just put my head down, studied, saved every dollar I earned, and tried to ignore the sting of being the overlooked daughter. But those years left a mark, deep, invisible, quietly burning. After high school, Paige was shipped off to a private arts university in Los Angeles, fully funded, of course. Tuition, apartment, extra cash for emergencies, which usually meant new outfits for networking events she never attended. I left the opposite way, across the country to New York, with a beat-up suitcase and a laptop that overheated if I opened more than 3 tabs. I lived in a shoebox apartment with 3 roommates, attended computer science classes during the day, and worked IT gigs at night. My parents would call occasionally to ask if I was eating enough, like checking on a stray cat they'd feed twice a year. But I got good, really good. I built tools, freelanced, coded until sunrise, made connections. A side project blew up on GitHub, then a freelance business, then a startup. We got funding, then an acquisition. A number landed in my account that didn't seem real. I went from eating cold noodles at 2 a.m. to walking through glass-walled boardrooms, wearing suits that cost more than anything I owned growing up. And I told no one. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I knew exactly how my family would react. Suspicion, competition, guilt, or worse, pressure to redirect my success toward Paige's failing acting career. "Well, your sister's struggling. Maybe you can help her out." "That's nice, Marissa, but your cousin has way more followers." Paige could really use support right now. I didn't want my achievements twisted into obligations. So I stayed quiet, even after I bought my own penthouse in Manhattan, a place with floor-to-ceiling windows and a skyline view that made me feel like I'd stepped into someone else's life. Then everything shifted. Last month, Grandma turned 85 and insisted on a big dinner at her favorite upscale restaurant. She's the only person in my family who ever treated me like I mattered, so I flew home, bought her favorite lilies, and arrived right on time. I felt the energy change the moment I walked in. My parents, aunt, uncle, cousin, and, of course, Paige were already gathered around the table. Paige sat in the center, wearing a shimmering dress and laughing just loud enough for the whole room to hear. She looked like she was trying to impress the silverware. I took the empty seat at the end, said hello, and handed Grandma her flowers. She lit up like I'd given her diamonds. "Marissa," she whispered, hugging me, "you always remember." Paige rolled her eyes. "We were just talking about my call back in LA. Netflix might pick me up." She delivered it like a royal proclamation. No one asked about my life. No one wanted to know. It was all Paige. Her auditions, her modeling deals, her TikTok fame, which consisted mostly of lip-sync videos filmed in good lighting. I tried to enjoy my food, listen to Grandma, stay grounded. I was used to being invisible, but then Paige looked right at me with that smirk she'd perfected over the years. "So, Marissa," she said lightly, "you still doing that computer thing? Freelancing or whatever?" I blinked. "Yes, still doing that." "Must be nice," she laughed. Working in pajamas all day? I'd go insane. But hey, not everyone's cut out for the spotlight. A few people chuckled. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not suddenly. More like a quiet snap, a seam giving way after years of tension. I remembered every birthday overshadowed, every moment dismissed, every sacrifice minimized. Every year I'd swallowed my hurt just to keep the peace. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Not rage, clarity. I didn't confront her at the table. I didn't retaliate. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled. A real one, because I finally understood something. This wasn't about Paige winning. It was about me no longer losing myself to smallness. I let her continue her performance. But deep down, I'd already made a decision. I was done shrinking. I was done apologizing for existing quietly. I was done letting my family believe I was the afterthought. And as I watched Paige soaking up the attention she'd been fed her whole life, I knew something she didn't. I was about to change the narrative. Not for her, for me. Flying back to New York after that dinner felt like stepping between two realities. One where I was the invisible daughter in Paige's shadow, and another where I lived in a penthouse overlooking the skyline of a city that finally treated me the way my family never did, with neutrality, respect, and indifference that I could shape into opportunity. The car dropped me off just after midnight. The lobby attendant greeted me by name. The elevator glowed with soft gold light as it carried me upward. And when the doors opened, the familiar hush of my home washed over me, marble floors reflecting the city lights, wide windows stretching from wall to wall, the kind of space that made you breathe differently. I walked barefoot across the cool stone, opened in the fridge, and grabbed a sparkling water. The lights dimmed to the soft, warm evening setting I programmed long ago. Everything was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and my heartbeat still echoing from the dinner. I should have felt proud. Instead, all I could think about was Paige's smirk. Must be nice working in pajamas all day. As if the last decade of my life had been a vacation. As if she had any idea what it meant to build something alone, to go hungry, to grind until your fingers ached, to sleep on air mattresses while coding through the night. That dinner hadn't just irritated me, it had undone something inside me. I'd spent years burying the pain their favoritism caused, telling myself it didn't matter, pretending I was above it, convincing myself success could fill the cracks they left. But pain doesn't disappear when ignored. It waits, quiet, patient, and it surfaces exactly when you think you're past it. For days afterward, I went through my routines almost mechanically. Meetings, investor calls, product demos, planning the next launch. But even in those moments of productivity, something simmered under the surface. That familiar ache of invisibility, that quiet question, why wasn't I ever enough for them? A week passed before the next hit came. I was in the middle of reviewing wireframes when my phone buzzed. It was a message from my father. Hey Marissa, Paige's 25th birthday is coming up. We're planning a surprise weekend in Miami. Flights and hotel are booked. Just need you to chip in for the group gift. No greeting, no, how are you? Just an assumption I'd contribute. An expectation. It wasn't the request that bothered me. It was the certainty behind it. I replied hours later. What's the group gift? A moment later, his message appeared. We're getting her a MacBook Pro and accessories. She really wants to start a beauty YouTube channel. Of course she did. For her 25th birthday, she was getting a luxury vacation and a top-of-the-line laptop. I couldn't even remember what I got for mine. Probably a discounted desk chair and takeout pizza. I typed, I won't be able to make it. I'll pass on the gift. Hope she has fun. He left me on read. Minutes later, the family group chat lit up. Aunt Cheryl. Marissa, sweetheart. Paige was really hoping you'd be there. This is important to her. My mom. Flights are non-refundable. Please don't be difficult. Then Paige. It's not about the money, Marissa. It's about showing up for your family. But whatever. Not surprised. That last message hit harder than I expected. Not surprised. As if my absence were a flaw in my character. As if I owed her something she'd never once given me. I didn't reply. But something in me shifted again. Sharp, decisive, undeniable. After the group chat fell quiet, I sat on my couch, lit only by the faint glow of the city outside, and opened my password manager. Somewhere in that digital vault was an old set of login credentials from my teenage years. A shared Dropbox folder. One my mother used to store important family documents. I found it. Most folders were mundane. Photos, tax files, scanned report cards. But one caught my eye. College apps and docs, Paige. I clicked. It was all there. Her acceptance letters, her essays, her recommendation letters, and then the invoices. $183,452 paid in full. Not a single scholarship, not a single loan, all covered without hesitation. I swallowed hard. Then I found the folder labeled Marissa. Inside was one document. Scholarship essays, drafts, doc. Nothing else. No invoices, no payments, no support. Just the essays I'd written myself at 17, alone at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., while Paige practiced monologues loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. A familiar burn spread through my chest, not anger, validation. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't exaggerated. They really had chosen her, again and again and again. I clicked out of the folder. My hands shook, not with rage, but with clarity. If Paige wanted the story to be that I'd always been the distant sister, if she wanted everyone to believe I sent her that Cartier bracelet she lied about, if she wanted to keep rewriting me into the background, then it was time to remind them who I actually was. Not for revenge, not for attention, but because I was tired, exhausted from years of being the child they forgot to praise, forgot to support, forgot to see. 2 weeks later, when Paige posted her Miami birthday photos with the caption, "Surrounded by the people who matter most. Wouldn't be here without you guys." I didn't feel jealousy. I didn't feel hurt. I felt resolve. The same resolve that carried me through New York winters with no heat, through all-nighters in crowded dorms, through sleepless nights debugging code, through every year I fought alone for a future no one believed I deserved. A month after the Miami trip, I received a call from Grandma. Her voice was soft but steady. "I saw Paige's birthday photos," she said. "I wish you'd gone." "I had my reasons." "I know," she replied. "Your father told me you sent Paige something nice." I frowned. "I didn't." "Oh." A beat of silence. "She told everyone you bought her a Cartier bracelet." I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Of course she used my name to elevate hers. Grandma sighed, a weary exhale filled with decades of understanding. "I knew it didn't sound like you." And that was when the quiet decision I'd been circling for weeks finally solidified. I wasn't going to stay small anymore. I wasn't going to be erased, misused, or rewritten. The next family event would be Grandma's 86th birthday. Same restaurant, same table, same audience. Except this time, I wasn't arriving as the invisible daughter. I was arriving as the woman I had become, and I wasn't coming empty-handed. Grandma's 86th birthday approached faster than I expected. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to decide how to walk back into a room where I had spent most of my life being dismissed, belittled, or simply ignored. 3 weeks to prepare myself for the moment I'd no longer hide the life I'd built. I didn't want a spectacle. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. So a week before the dinner, I contacted Dylan, the real estate agent who had helped me buy the Penthouse. I told him I needed the official, printed deed, embossed, stamped, unmistakably real. He didn't ask why. He just said, "It'll be at your doorstep tomorrow morning." When the envelope arrived, I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it. It represented everything, every hour I worked, every night I went hungry, every time I chose myself because no one else would. It wasn't just a deed. It was proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I had value separate from my family's distorted narrative. And yet, even then, I didn't feel triumphant. Part of me still felt like the girl eating alone in the school cafeteria while Paige held court at a table of admiring friends. But that girl was gone, buried under years of quiet resilience. The night of the dinner, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror wearing a navy-tailored suit. Sharp lines, clean silhouette, understated confidence. Not flashy, not loud, just elegant and intentional. The kind of outfit Paige would never imagine I could pull off. I pinned my hair back, slipped small diamond studs into my ears, and tucked the folded deed into the inside pocket of my blazer. No binder, no envelope, just the truth resting against my heartbeat. When the car dropped me off in front of the restaurant, I stepped out into the warm glow of the evening lights. The glass doors reflected my silhouette back at me, but it didn't look like the old me. It looked like someone who'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. Inside, the hostess immediately recognized the family group. "Your party is already seated," she said kindly. Of course they were. As I approached, I heard Paige before I saw her, laughing too loudly, telling some story with sweeping gestures and breathy, dramatic flair. She always sounded like she was auditioning for an invisible audience. When I reached the table, her eyes flicked toward me, glittering with that familiar blend of superiority and curiosity. "Well, look who finally made it," she said, arms extended theatrically. We were taking bets on whether you'd show up. I wouldn't miss Grandma's birthday, I replied evenly. I bent to hug Grandma, handing her a single white rose, the kind she loves most. Her eyes sparkled with warmth. You look beautiful, Marissa, she whispered. Thank you, I murmured back. Dinner began the same way all family dinners did. Paige absorbed the oxygen in the room. She talked about a big audition that probably wasn't real, an influencer event she might attend, new collaborations she was negotiating. My parents drank in every word like gospel. But something was different this time. I wasn't shrinking in my seat. I wasn't folding into silence. I was observing, calm, steady, quietly waiting. A few times, Paige attempted to make jabs. So, Marissa, still working in those pajamas? Do you even have coworkers, or just your laptop? Must be lonely. Instead of flinching, I simply smiled politely and said nothing. And the lack of reaction unsettled her. I saw it in the way her laugh became tighter, her eyes darting to me more often. She felt something shifting. She just didn't know what. Dessert arrived, an elaborate chocolate torte with Happy 86th Grandma piped across the top. The server lit a single candle. Everyone applauded. Then, as always, Grandma turned to me. So, Marissa, she said gently, what's new in your world? Every fork stilled. Paige's smile froze mid-performance. I reached into my blazer, pulled out the deed, and placed it on the pristine white tablecloth. I bought a place, I said simply. Paige snorted. Another apartment? Cute. I slid the document toward the center of the table. Not exactly. Dad leaned forward, squinting. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Aunt Cheryl inhaled sharply. Across the top, in bold, unmistakable letters. Ownership. Deed property. 3-bedroom. Penthouse. Upper East Side. Owner. Marissa Celeste Carter. Silence cascaded across the table, heavy and absolute, swallowing Paige's smirk whole. My father dropped his fork. My mother's mouth fell open. Someone gasped. I wasn't sure who. Paige just stared at the page like it was written in another language. Then she stood up so suddenly her chair screeched. You're lying. I arched an eyebrow. About which part? You, she sputtered. You don't buy penthouses. You can't. She gestured wildly as if the air itself owed her an explanation. What is this? Some prank? I shrugged lightly. Closing happened in December. Her voice rose, shaky and incredulous. Why didn't you tell us? I took a sip of water. No one asked. That made her flinch, deeply, visibly. Mom spoke next, voice trembling. Marissa, is this real? I nodded once. Yes. Silence again. A different silence this time. Not disbelief, recalibration. Years of their assumptions crumbling in front of them. Paige's hands balled into fists. So what? She snapped. You wait until Grandma's birthday to drop this like some kind of stunt? No, I replied calmly. I waited until someone cared enough to ask about my life. She laughed, a brittle, broken sound. Unbelievable. You just want attention. Paige, I said softly, you lie about me for attention. Her eyes widened, fear, guilt, rage, all tightening into one expression. I leaned forward slightly. You told everyone I bought you a Cartier bracelet for your birthday. The light drained from her face. The entire table went still. Grandma's lips pressed into a thin line. That, she said, was a lie. Paige's voice cracked. It was a joke. No, Grandma said sharply. It wasn't. Paige looked around desperately, but no one moved to defend her, not even our parents. For the first time in her life, she stood alone. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So you're all just, what, turning on me? Because she bought herself a fancy apartment? Her father, our father, ran a hand over his face. Paige, enough. That single word shook her. She stared at us, eyes glassy, hands trembling. Then she grabbed her purse, spun around, and stormed out of the restaurant. No one followed, not even Mom. The rest of dinner sat in a haze of quiet tension. Grandma squeezed my hand and whispered, I'm proud of you. You deserve this moment. My mother cried softly. My father looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Half regret, half respect. My aunt murmured apologies. My cousin threw sympathetic glances. But as I left the restaurant and stepped into the night air, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Because proving myself hadn't healed anything. It had only revealed how deep the wounds truly were. I had spent my whole life fighting for a recognition that, even when it finally arrived, didn't satisfy me. I wasn't sure anything ever would. But I knew one thing. The story was no longer Paige's to control. And the next chapter, whatever came, would be mine to write. In the weeks after Grandma's birthday dinner, my life moved in strange, uneven waves. On the surface, everything looked the same. Meetings, investor calls, product planning, late-night debugging sessions. But internally, I felt like someone had pried open a locked room inside me and left the door swinging. I slept irregularly. Sometimes I'd pass out for 12 hours. Sometimes I'd lie awake until sunrise watching the sky shift from black to bruised blue to gold. My mind kept replaying the dinner, not the shock in my parents' eyes or Paige's meltdown, but the moment after, when everyone left and I was alone in the quiet glow of my apartment with nothing but the echo of old wounds. Success didn't fix anything. Money didn't stitch the childhood fractures. Recognition didn't erase the years of being the forgotten daughter. If anything, it amplified the hollowness. I stopped answering calls, skipped meetings, ignored emails. I pushed back launches, canceled investor dinners, let proposals sit unopened in my inbox. My assistant, patient, perceptive, sent gentle nudges. Just checking in. Need anything? You've missed 3 calls. I didn't respond. I moved through my penthouse like a ghost, drifting through a museum of someone else's victories. Every window reflected the same lost expression back at me. And slowly that old voice, the one I'd spent years burying, began to whisper again. You were always the second choice. You got lucky. They don't care about you. They never will. I hated that Paige still had space in my mind. I hated that the wounds felt fresh. I hated that I cared. One gray morning, after another sleepless night, I forced myself to leave the apartment. I walked aimlessly through the city, past cafes and boutiques, until rain began to fall, heavy, sudden, unrelenting. I ducked under an awning next to a father and his little boy. The boy held a small camera, excitement radiating out of him. Dad, is this where Spider-Man lives? He asked, pointing at the skyscrapers. The dad laughed. Not exactly, but close. Then the boy looked up at me. Do you live here? I nodded. Yeah. His eyes widened. Whoa, you must be super rich. I expected the old reflex, to minimize myself, to shrug and say something self-deprecating. Instead, I chuckled softly. Something like that. The dad smiled. Well, you must have worked hard to get here. And that stopped me completely. Not because of the words, but because of the tone. Simple, genuine acknowledgement from a stranger who owed me nothing. Hard work, not luck, not favoritism, not family gifts. Work I did alone. The rain slowed. I walked home with something shifting inside me. Not healed, not whole, but steadier. Over the next few weeks, I began picking myself up piece by piece. Therapy, morning meditation, evening walks, gym sessions, reconnecting with my co-founder, rebuilding my routines, reopening the project we'd shelved. I donated quietly to scholarship programs, funded a startup led by a first-gen college student who reminded me of myself, hosted dinners with friends who actually saw me. I stopped checking the family group chat altogether, and little by little, the noise faded. The voice that sounded like Paige faded. The old insecurities softened until I could finally breathe. Then the phone rang. My father's name lit up the screen like a warning flare. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But some instinct made me swipe and hold the phone to my ear. Marissa, he said, voice strained. We need to talk. It's about Paige. The old tension crept in. I didn't say anything at first. Then carefully. Is she okay? A long pause, a shaky breath. She's going through something. In the background, I heard my mother murmuring anxiously. What kind of something? I asked. Dad hesitated, collecting courage. She's being sued. I blinked. Sued by who? Her old roommate. There were damages to the apartment, missing payments. Management got involved. Her name is on the lease. I closed my eyes. Of course it was something like that. And she said she was waiting for sponsorship money that never came through, he added weakly. Dad, I said quietly, how much? Another pause. Nearly $12,000. $12,000. Not a small amount, not a catastrophic amount, but suddenly, to them, a lot. Funny how the same parents who paid $183,000 for Paige's degree without blinking suddenly found $12,000 overwhelming. But the next sentence hit harder. She told the landlord, he said slowly, that you'd cover it. Silence dropped over me like a curtain. She what? I asked. She used your name without telling us. My jaw tightened. Dad, I haven't spoken to her since the dinner. I know, he said quickly. I know, we didn't realize. She said you agreed weeks ago. We thought maybe you two had mended things privately. I nearly laughed from disbelief. Paige had always lived in a fantasy world where consequences didn't apply and other people existed to buffer her mistakes. But this, using my name in a legal situation, was different. It wasn't childish. It was reckless, dangerous. Marissa, he continued, she's not doing well. She's been spiraling, posting strange things online, drinking too much. She's barely working. I think she needs help. There it was, the pivot, the parental plea, the expectation wrapped in concern. And you want me to provide it? I asked. We thought maybe you could talk to her. She listens to you. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Dad, I said gently, since when has Paige ever listened to me? He fell silent. For the first time, I think he realized he didn't have an answer. I'll think about it, I said. But the moment I hung up, I knew my decision. I wasn't paying for her lawsuit. I wasn't cleaning up her mess. I wasn't letting myself be rewritten as her safety net. Not again, not ever. The next morning, I called a lawyer friend. After I explained the situation, he chuckled. She's bluffing, he said. If you didn't sign anything and there's no written agreement, you're in the clear. But send a formal denial to make it official. He drafted it within hours. I emailed it to the landlord, CC'd Paige. No response from her. But I wasn't done. I contacted an old acquaintance who worked in digital reputation tracking, someone who had flagged influencer scandals before they broke. Keep an eye on Paige Carter, I told him. I think something's coming. He already had a tab open. She's been on my radar for months, he said. She tried promoting a fake skincare brand last week. Website was a dead link. People are asking where their orders are. My stomach twisted. This wasn't immaturity. This was fraud. I collected screenshots, deleted posts, emails, comments. I didn't share any of it. Not with my parents, not with Grandma. I was gathering truth, quietly, thoroughly. When Mom eventually called me in tears, begging me to help Paige, saying she was falling apart, I stayed calm. She needed boundaries 10 years ago, I said. Marissa, she's still your sister. And I'm finally treating her like one. I hung up. Later that week, I visited Grandma. I told her everything. Paige's lies, the lawsuit, the fraud, the pressure. She didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. She just sighed. I hoped it wasn't that bad, she said softly. But I knew. Then she looked me straight in the eyes. She's fire, Marissa. Flashy, bright, uncontrollable. But fire burns out quickly. You're stone. Steady. Lasting. And with those words, she gave me permission for what I was about to do next. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning humiliation. I was planning truth. A real truth. A full truth. A truth no one could ignore anymore. So I made a decision. One last dinner. At my place. A night where the entire family would finally face the consequences of the version of Paige they created. Every invitation came back yes. Even Paige's single letter reply. K. And as I prepared my penthouse, lighting, table settings, seating, I placed one item beneath my chair in a black leather folio. Everything. Every lie. Every screenshot. Every forged implication. Every document she'd used with my name. Not to throw in her face, not to shame her. To end the narrative. The one where I was the invisible sister and she was the golden child. The truth was finally coming. And this time, no one would be able to look away. The night of the dinner arrived with an unsettling calm, one of those evenings where the city felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. My penthouse glowed with soft amber light, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything was intentionally simple. A long table, warm lighting, polished silverware, 8 chairs. Neutral. Controlled. Nothing ostentatious. Nothing dramatic. I wasn't staging a show. I was staging an ending. By 7:00 p.m., the elevator chimed. My family arrived almost exactly on time, something that never happened unless Paige was involved. Grandma entered first, her steps slow but steady. My parents followed, wearing the kind of tight, polite expressions people reserve for situations they don't fully understand but are afraid to interrupt. Paige came last. Black dress, heavy eyeliner, chin lifted as if daring anyone to comment. She scanned the penthouse with an appraising glance, trying to hide the flicker of insecurity in her eyes. Nice place, she said casually. A little empty, though. It helps me think, I replied. We all sat. Small talk floated like dust in sunlight. Forced. Awkward. Fragile. I let it play out. I didn't rush. I didn't direct. I waited for the moment that felt natural. It came during the main course. I stood, tapped my glass, and every conversation died mid-sentence. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know this dinner probably felt unexpected, but I wanted to bring the family together for something that matters. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Dad cleared his throat. Paige rolled her eyes. This is not a confrontation, I continued. This is closure, for me. Then I reached under my chair and lifted the black leather folio. I didn't open it. I didn't wave it around dramatically. I simply placed it on the table. This folder, I said calmly, contains the lies that have been told about me over the last 6 months. Lies I can prove. Lies that hurt my name, my work, and my peace. Paige froze. She tried to keep her face neutral, but her hands tightened around her silverware. I'm not passing it around, I added. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I just want you all to know that I'm done accepting blame, accepting silence, accepting invisibility. The words hung in the air, heavy, unfamiliar, undeniable. Paige scoffed. Oh my God, you're so dramatic. I looked at her, finally letting my gaze meet hers without shrinking. No, I said softly. I'm precise. A flicker of panic crossed her face. You've spun stories your entire life, I continued. You lied about me sending you gifts. You used my name with your landlord. You told people I was supporting you financially, things I never agreed to. Paige's breath caught. You're twisting. Stop, I said. And she did. Not because I shouted, because I didn't need to. You've always had a safety net, I said, voice steady. Mom and Dad defended you, protected you, enabled you, and I stayed quiet because it was easier for everyone if I didn't stand up for myself. Then I leaned back slightly. That ends tonight. The room fell silent. Then something unexpected happened. Grandma stood. Her voice was quiet, but sharp enough to fracture the air. Paige, she said, enough. Paige blinked. Grandma? No, Grandma repeated, stronger. You've hurt your sister again, and we all allowed it. But she will not be your shield anymore. My mother flinched. My father looked down, eyes clouded with the kind of regret that arrives too late. Paige's composure cracked. What? You're all taking her side now? Because she bought a fancy apartment? Because she has money now? No, I said, because you crossed a line, and because none of this is about money. Her jaw trembled. You just want everyone to hate me. I don't want anyone to hate you, I replied softly. I want you to see the damage you've caused, and I want you to understand I'm not your scapegoat, not anymore. Paige pushed her chair back, hands shaking. You're all unbelievable, she whispered. You'll regret this. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. No one followed. The silence afterward wasn't angry. It wasn't awkward. It was honest. For the first time, my parents looked at me, really looked at me. My mother's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Because you wouldn't have believed me, I said. You never did. Her breath hitched. Dad rubbed his temples. Aunt Cheryl apologized. Cousin Lily gave me a trembling, sympathetic smile. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand with the quiet pride of someone who had been waiting 28 years for this moment. By the time everyone left, there was no shouting, no accusations, just clarity, and a kind of fragile understanding. Paige's downfall unfolded slowly. A brand called her out for using their name without permission. Her follower count dropped. A live stream rant about toxic family energy backfired and went viral in the wrong way. She deleted everything a day later. Her text to me went from angry to desperate to silent. Eventually, she moved in with a friend across town. No job, no sponsors, no spotlight, just quiet. For the first time, she was being forced to live without an audience. As for me, I slept better. I ate better. I worked with energy instead of exhaustion. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. I hosted dinners with friends who valued me. I learned to cook dishes I never had time for. I read books at sunrise. I decorated the penthouse the way I wanted, not the way I thought success demanded. I invited Grandma for a weekend stay. She cried when she saw the master bedroom. I always knew you would shine, she whispered. You were just surrounded by people who were too blind to see it. I hugged her the way the child version of me always wished she could. And somewhere in the spaces between those quiet days, I realized something profound. I didn't need the family to choose me. I didn't need their validation, their praise, their approval. I never needed it. Growing past them, that was my closure. Not the dinner, not the reveal, not exposing Paige. It was choosing myself, finally, completely, unapologetically. And as I stood one night in front of the massive window of my penthouse, the city glowing like 1,000 possibilities beneath me, I understood something I had spent my whole life waiting to hear. I wasn't invisible. I was never invisible. I had simply been looking for recognition in the wrong place. And I had finally finally walked into the version of my life where I didn't have to shrink.